I'm ready to go. I'll go last. I learned from all you guys. This is World War II. I always take a tour when I come here. You're kicking this off, right, Rosa? You're kicking this off.
Rosa takes over.
Okay, good. Then Matt goes?
I guess so. Hold on. Okay, got to get through this budget thing. What happens this week?
Every week or something.
They're going to try to do it this week.
Oh, they won't get that done. Or they'll have, I think we may have a better indication in May. Late May. I think they're going to be considering a lot of stuff.
Well, you saw three Republican states have constitutional amendments to defend them from that. So they lose their
Because I'm going to bring it to the tax state.
Yeah, Bill.
Okay.
Those panels have the trigger.
yeah.
Please be seated. Welcome to the West Haven Veterans Museum and Learning Center. And when boy, Joel is here. I'm glad you're all here. Appreciate it. I want to introduce Rosa DeLauro. Let's go. Rosa, I appreciate it.
Thank you. No, we appreciate you and this wonderful, wonderful museum. It really is a treasure, and thank you all so much for what you do and maintaining it and adding on, and you get such a sense of our history, the strength of our history. You know, the men and women who have served in behalf of this great nation, and all by way of saying that what is in here has allowed all of us who are sitting here this morning to be able to participate with you and to be free to speak our minds. And that is what the United States of America has been about. It will always be about, and it is the result of the just unbelievable bravery and sacrifice of the men and women who served. So thanks so much for being here, all of you. And I'll let you know the rundown of folks who are going to be greeting you today. Allison Weir, who is Executive Director of the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center and a U.S. Air Force veteran. State Senator Matt Lesser, who's Vice Chair of the Committee on Veteran and Military Affairs. James Matthews, who was the National Legislative Chairman, VFW Department of Connecticut. I'll also acknowledge Dominic Giuliano, who is the State Adjutant Quartermaster of the VFW Department of Connecticut. Paul Tarbox, who is a U.S. Army veteran and U.S. member of the Veterans Advisory Committee that I have. We are Richard Desso, President of Surfside Veterans, City of West Haven, a Veterans Commissioner. Governor Ned Lamont, yes, who is going to be our closer today. Governor, thanks for being here. I must just tell you this. We were on the phone this past week, and we were chatting about so many of the, you know, what's happening in Washington with a lot of the cuts and so forth. And I think I told the governor I was going to be on the phone with a Zoom with veterans organizations. He says, let's do a veterans organization event together. So got off the phone and we planned it, and here's the governor. Thanks so much for being here today. Let me recognize also State Representative Bill Heffernan, who was with us here today as well. Look, we're here today because I'm going to be pretty flat out about this. This administration has shattered what I view as a sacred trust between our country and those who have sacrificed for its survival. Elon Musk and President Trump, again in my view, are recklessly and unlawfully freezing and impounding congressionally appropriated funds from a swath of agencies, programs, and services across the federal government that serve the American people. And they have directly targeted veterans. Now, when I say impounding, when we pass a bill, it passed in the House and in the Senate, both Democrats and Republicans, and both in the House and in the United States Senate, so it's both sides of the aisle and both the chambers of the House. That gets passed, that gets sent on to the president, and he signs it into law. These appropriations bills, that's the money that goes to the agencies that serve our nation in a whole variety of ways, is appropriated, and it is the law of the land. You cannot, the Constitution says the power of the purse is within the purview of the Congress. So taking those funds, or what I call stealing those funds, is really unlawful. And people need to understand that. That is not to be, that was what we need to try to focus on. But we also need to focus on what the consequences of not meeting the needs of the agencies. There's been an indiscriminate firing of thousands of civil servants, and that has been devastating for veterans, who make up 30% of the nearly 2.3 million federal civilian employee workers. My view, again, disrespects veterans who are valued, who are sought after employees in our federal workforce, bringing their expertise, their experience, and their patriotism to every single agency. They have already bravely served our nation in the armed forces, and now they have chosen to continue to serve their country as civil servants. They are patriots. By our estimate, Elon Musk and President Trump have fired at least 6,000 veterans without cause. You know, I stand here and say that. Some of you may say, is that accurate? I ask you to check. Look yourselves. You can find out this information, and you just don't have to take my word for it. Though, I've tried to bring facts to the issue. These folks will have to scramble for new jobs and benefits while struggling to feed their families and to keep a roof over their heads. They're not numbers. These are men and women who have families that they need to care about. And one day summarily said, you are terminated. It's wrong. It is wrong. I believe it is an unspeakable betrayal, a slap in the face to those who have served and wanted nothing more than to keep serving. And this administration apparently feels no shame at all in abandoning American veterans because they are prepared to double down. There was a Department of Veteran Affairs memo. Again, I ask you to check this out for your own information. They have said they want to cut thousands of jobs at the Department of Veteran Affairs. They're talking about 80,000 individuals. That is 17% of essential workers. Fully aware that 1 in 4 employees at the VA are themselves veterans who have invaluable knowledge. This is being called an anti-waste program. An anti-waste program. And by the way, we have almost 4,000 VA employees in Connecticut, and all but 259 work in veterans' health. I have fought to cut waste and corruption that rips off our government, but veterans are not waste. Health care and services for veterans are not waste. They are a sacred obligation that we commit to when we send men and women into harm's way. The Republican Party has turned its back on that obligation, and the 2025 full-year funding bill that was signed into law and which was written by House Republicans without any input from Democrats, they eliminated the advanced funding for the Toxic Exposures Fund, or something called the TEF. This fund, by the way, overwhelmingly bipartisan, passed the House and the Senate. It honors what we agreed to is to take special care of veterans who were exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic chemicals during their service. And we opened that up to all veterans in all wars. And what we also said was, we're going to make this funding mandatory, that you have to do this year by year. And further, we said, let's make sure that we advance funding for a year so that this medical treatment and dealing with the medical health of veterans is not caught up in an appropriations process or in a political process that winds up saying the government's going to shut down or it's not going to shut down. We wanted to try to avoid that, to safeguard the medical treatment for veterans. So we advance fund it, we fund a year, and then we fund the following year. So we funded for 25 and for 26. Now, so what happened was that the bill that came before us stripped out that advance funding. Now, for 2025, the amount of money is $6 billion, which we commit to. We said we were going to do that. And that's in the 2025 bill. But in 2026, the tab is $23 billion. So by not putting that advance funding in, it calls into question whether that $23 billion will be actualized in 2026, which, again, we advance funding for the Indian Health Service, we do it for public broadcasting, and several other veterans programs, so that it was deliberate to hold back the $23 billion. That's wrong. So this is what we need to do, and I just say this to you. The bill also removes specific funding within the Veterans Health Administration, including homeless assistance, mental health care, rural health, substance abuse programs, caregivers support, and others. We are going to be holding people accountable to make sure that the funding is spent according to the law for 2025. There is, we're getting, those conversations will be coming up, and since we said we're going to put into practice for 2025 what we did in 2024. Now, in that 2024 bill, there are all kinds of directives that say this amount of money goes for this cause, this amount of money goes for that cause. So we're going to hold the administration feet to the fire to make sure that that money gets expended in the way that it was designated. Also, you need to understand that there have been attacks on Social Security, and that will make it harder for veterans to access the support they earned. The website has crashed. Field offices, 47 of them are going to be shut down, 26 this year, and the balance next year. And so what we're going to mean, if you have fewer staff, fewer appointments, longer wait times, and more roadblocks to getting the Social Security, again, that veterans have earned. They have also made Social Security data. They confiscated Social Security data. This is the Elon Musk folks, and including information about VA benefits are among the records stolen from the Department of Treasury. So again, I'm asking, if you question what I'm saying, I ask you please to investigate what is going on. So now, but I will just say that it is time for there to be pushback at every level. Dozens of courts have put restraining orders on the administration's actions. The courts are our friends. There have been maybe about 120 or so lawsuits that are filed, maybe 60 or so we have gotten redress from the courts. There is also legislation that will be introduced in the Senate. We may not win it, but at least we will be making the fight about it. And then the third piece of this is channeling the outrage, really, of people like yourselves and others. We will continue, since we are not allowed to sue. Please understand that. People have said to me, well, why isn't the Congress bringing suit? As we're in the minority in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate, we cannot bring a suit. But what we can do is to help those organizations that are bringing suit, and we file what are called Friends of the Court briefs, amicus briefs, to help out. We need to channel this public outrage through the Congress, and I mean that. You know, Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You all, and the veterans nationwide, are external pressure. Your voices need to be heard. I am working and leading an effort in the House to defeat what I believe is a self-destruction assault on our nation's veterans. We staunchly oppose the partisan funding bill that empowered the administration to continue its attacks. I spent hours on the phone with senators trying to convince them that we cannot hand over the keys to a lawless administration, and I believe that House Democrats are going to continue that fight. There's havoc at every level. Veterans are being thrown under the bus and firing them. It is up to us to create as much public pressure as possible, and we need to bring that pressure to bear to those who would not stand up for America's veterans, for middle-class families, for businesses, and we will forever disgrace our nation's history and treatment of those who sacrificed on our behalf if we are not standing up. And I thank you for listening to me. I know I went on for a while, but there is so much that's happening, and I believe that you need to get the information and the facts, and I am happy for you to scrutinize every fact that I laid out so that you know for yourselves what the truth is, and then you'll take the action that you believe you need to in these circumstances. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Allison Weir, again, Executive Director of Connecticut Veterans Legal Center and a U.S. Air Force veteran. Allison.
Thank you, Rosa, for your leadership and bringing attention to this issue of the cuts in VA. My name is Allison Weir. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center. CVLC provides free legal services to low-income veterans as part of a medical legal partnership with VA Healthcare Connecticut. We help veterans secure the benefits they've earned through their service. The VA says it won't cut veterans' benefits, but as stated, it will lay off over 80,000 employees of the VA in order to get back to 2019 staffing levels. But the thing is, the VA wasn't effective in 2019, and many veterans waited years to get their claims adjudicated, some dying in the process of waiting. Since then, the Congress has passed the PACT Act, which Representative DeLauro referenced, which requires the VA to compensate veterans for illnesses incurred during exposure to toxic substances, debilitating and often life-threatening illnesses. The Act expanded the number of veterans filing claims, increasing the need for trained adjudicators and medical staff to process claims. The VA was in the midst of hiring the people they needed to process the claims, providing medical screening, and treat people who became ill due to toxic exposure before the change of administration. By returning to staffing levels that were inadequate before the PACT Act, the VA will ensure the delays experienced in 2019 will be extended and more debilitating, and more people will die while waiting for their benefits to be adjudicated. This is not a problem that can be solved with AI, as real people are needed to examine the veteran, evaluate the illness, how it connects to the veteran's service, and how it affects their life post-service. Our clients' cases are complicated, often involving trauma that went untreated while in service, resulting in behavior that gets them thrown out of the service with no prospects. These cases need a team of trained professionals to help veterans get back on their feet. One client, let's call him Frank, came to us after being thrown out of the Navy with other than honorable discharge because he was absent without leave. He went AWOL because he had been severely bullied and hazed and subject to blanket parties by his fellow sailors, which caused him to spiral into severe depression and attempt to commit suicide a few times. After his separation from the Navy, he was homeless and living in his car. A VA staff member worked with him and referred him to get him into mental health treatment and housing, and referred him to us to help him file his claim for service-connected disabilities. Because he had bad paper, it was a complicated case, but we were able to successfully file a service-connected disability claim. He now has a place to live, income, and medical care. It was a team effort, and while he is still in recovery, there is no doubt that the VA clinicians and social workers he encountered saved his life. 80,000 people laid off sounds like an abstraction, but each of those people is part of a team helping people like Frank, providing health care, helping them find housing, assisting them in reconnecting to civilian life, reviewing and evaluating the service-connected disability claims. And many of them are veterans too, so they understand what their clients have gone through. If these cuts go through as planned, taking the Secretary at his word that he will not cut benefits, veterans will still suffer because the VA provides so much more than just monetary benefits. As Representative DeLauro mentioned, there's mental health support, there's housing support, there's a collection of wraparound services. The VA service model is a holistic one in order to ensure that veterans have what they need to thrive. I'm proud that CVLC is a partner in this effort, and I do not want to think about how much more difficult our job will be if we do not have the VA partners to do their job. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Allison. I'll just make one more point to you. The VA now serves more than 2 million women veterans. And it's been difficult sometimes for women veterans to come forward to get the kind of treatment that they need. But I would just mention to you that it's the population of black veterans, Hispanic veterans, et cetera, what has been done, there's been a dismissal of the director of the Center for Women's Veterans and the Center for Minority Veterans. Those people have been gone to try to deal with populations that need the help that is provided by the VA. Let me ask State Senator Matt Lesser to come forward. He's Vice Chair of the Committee on Veteran and Military Affairs at the State House.
Thank you, Rosa. There are 435 members of the House, 535 members of Congress, but there's only one Rosa. And I think we are all very lucky to have her in our corner. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the veterans and the veteran service organizations that are here today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. We cannot thank you enough. Now, over in Hartford on the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee where I serve, we hear from a lot of veterans. In fact, I have a ton of veterans in my district. We've got the State Department veterans in Rocky Hill. We have the Newington Veteran VA Hospital as well. We have a large concentration, and we hear from a ton of veterans. I have yet to meet a veteran who signed up to serve our country because of the VA. They signed up to serve our country sometimes because they were drafted, more often because they enlisted, because they believed in public service, because they believed in defending our country, protecting our values, keeping us free. Those are the values of the United States military, and it is our job as citizens to say thank you, and to say thank you by providing all of the health care that you have earned. And it is why it is so outrageous that at this moment we are taking a huge step backwards in this country. I've heard a lot of good things about the VA in my time in the legislature. I've heard a little bit of grumbling, but not one person who's had a complaint about the VA has said that the problem with the VA is that it is overstaffed. Not one person has ever said that. And the idea that the VA will get better if we fire 80,000 employees is ridiculous. It will not make things better. It will make things worse. It will mean longer lines. It will mean harder to access care. It will make it harder on our veterans who have served and sacrificed so much for our country, and it is unconscionable. So I am hoping that President Trump and his administration reconsider this course of action. I hope they will listen to Rosa. I really do. And we have an opportunity. This is going to be a very tough week for Congress. They're going to have to make a lot of decisions. But the one thing they should not do is make it any more difficult for those who've served and sacrificed for our country. So I'm really hoping that they will reconsider. I was just up at a protest this weekend, and I got to meet a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he had a sign, and he talked about his service and his sacrifice. And for that gentleman, and for all of those in our country, we should reverse this course of action and support our veterans. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt, and thanks for your good work in Hartford. Let me introduce Jim Matthews, our National Legislative Chairman, VFW Department of Connecticut.
Thank you, Governor and Congresswoman, for the invite for our State of Connecticut VFW. Thank you to all our fellow veterans for your service and your continued support for your fellow veterans throughout the state of Connecticut and our nation. You know, over the last few months, we have never seen this in our nation before, where hardworking and humble federal employees have been villainized to be the problems within our nation at the national level. 2% of our federal employees, only 2% of the American workforce is federal employees. And at the federal level, 4.3% of our federal budget makes up the compensation for these federal employees. Now, when compared to our state and our local communities, the comparison is far different for that compensation for municipality and state employees, where it's traditionally anywhere between 80 and 90% of the state or local budgets to pay for our services for those citizens serving other citizens. Now, we also must remember too that 25% is the number that our federal employees earn less than the industry, industry workers throughout our nation. So they're not doing it because they're going to get rich off of this opportunity. They're doing it because they're providing a service, because they want to give back to the American people. They want to make America better. The challenge also is 30% of our workforce, as you've heard, is veterans within the federal workforce. And in some of our departments, like the DOT, it's upwards of 64% of our federal civilians are veterans themselves. We hire these people because of their character, their capabilities to we bring them on board because of their capabilities, their integrity. They don't have to be retrained for many jobs that they already provide in the skill sets that are required to do their jobs. So it saves the American people in the long run for not having to retrain them for the simple skills and the excellent service that they can provide already. Now, it's unfortunate that what I call the cowardice management tactics that the current administration is using, such as blanket firings and terminations of probationary employees off of a list that is provided by the various agencies within our departments at the national level to OPM. And OPM just comes in with Musk's team, and they just fire everybody because they're simply on a list for probationary purposes. Whether that is because they only recently obtained the job within the last 12 to 24 months, or they just got promoted. We've had people fired because of probationary promotions. Now, these cowardice management tactics are not what we as Americans traditionally, how we treat our fellow Americans. We're receiving termination emails on a Friday night in the beginning of the weekend. Once you log into your account, you get the one look at your termination email, and then you try to get in later to obtain some of your records off of your employee records, and your accesses are denied. People are being taken advantage of, I would offer you, simply because they're federal employees, and this must stop. The Secretary of the VA claims that there will be no reduction in resources or services to our veterans, which make up 30% of our workforce, remember, when he he cannot say that realistically when you are getting rid of the 80,000 plus employees. Just like you've heard already, those resources and those services, it is unrealistic to believe that they will be maintained. They will be reduced, and our veterans, their families, and their caretakers will take the brunt of this. I will leave our elected officials with this. We need to honor the contract that our veterans across the board have signed over their lifetime, whether they serve one contract or they serve multiple years to make it to retirement. That contract was a dotted line that people signed, willing to give the ultimate sacrifice. Honor that contract. Our veterans are humble. They will not step up and raise their hand that I need. We're the quiet professionals, and we have these organizations that are representing veterans today here because they need a voice, because they are the quiet professionals. And I'll leave with this: support equals action equals delivered promises. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for just laying it out in those terms. I think you cover the waterfront, and you know, speaking of, terminating people on a Friday night, and then Allison leaned over and told me that, sometimes on a Monday morning, people go in and they, their job is over. If you think that is not happening, the people at Health and Human Services last week, they lined up in front of the Health and Human Services to go into the office, and they found that their ID card didn't work anymore, didn't function, and that's the way they found out that they were terminated, that they were gone. I mean, it's shocking that that's happening here, and shocking in terms of veterans. And when I talk about HHS, I'm talking about mental health issues that affect veterans. When I talk about what's going on at HUD, the same thing with the terminating people. That's housing. The Department of Labor, the training programs, the work programs that have special carve-outs for veterans because we want to recognize that sacrifice and that courage. Those are all at risk, and some of these offices have already been shut down. Let me ask a U.S. Army veteran, and I'm so delighted that he's part of the Veterans Advisory Committee for me and has been for a number of years, and that's Paul Tarbox. Paul, please.
Well, it's definitely a little nerve-wracking following all those prestigious people before me, so hopefully you'll bear with me. My name's Paul Tarbox. I served in Iraq with the U.S. Army, but more importantly, after I got home, I kind of dedicated my life to serving Connecticut's veterans. I was the primary staffer for the Connecticut General Assembly's Military Affairs Committee from 2007 to 2021. I was on the Board of Trustees for the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs, and I've been an advisor on veterans policy for several federal office holders. I really can't lay out, as well as kind of my predecessors, just how devastating these cuts are. But what I can kind of mention is there's also an ancillary issue where this is a national security problem. I mean, George Washington, and I'll paraphrase, essentially said the willingness of our youth to serve in our military is predicated on how they were perceived to be treated for our veterans. It's obvious to many of us that our Vietnam vets were treated with disrespect when they first got home. And that was a mistake. Luckily for GWAT veterans, that was kind of corrected, where when we came home, we received much better. But in the entire process, the VA had issues where they were struggling to try to treat the people and the ailments that came through. And there's been steady kind of improvements as they come along. But as was outlined, this policy is going to actually reverse that. It's going to take away, the corrections to wait times, the corrections to scheduling appointments, and most importantly, the ability to kind of adjudicate claims. And as Allison pointed out, some of those can be life-threatening if they're not dealt with and have horrible impact on the finances of our families. This issue is something where we're also going to have to look at the military's kind of recruitment standards. They're harder than they were before. America's youth aren't in the same type of shape. So if we're going to have a smaller applicant pool, and now we're going to talk to the grandfathers from Vietnam and the fathers from GWAT who say, hey, maybe you should consider not joining because there's not going to be the support for you need, we're going to have an issue with recruitment and retention. These cuts are going to be devastating to our future readiness. I mean, essentially, when we're looking at it, Doge and Elon Musk are busy playing checkers when they should be playing chess. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you for bringing up the national security issue, which I think is critical. And I listen to a lot of the retired military and talk about their fear of what's happening, and the whole issue of recruitment and retention is critical. Thanks very, very much. Richard Desso is president of Surfside Veterans, right here in the city of West Haven. He's a Veterans Commissioner. Richard?
Thank you, Rosa. Governor, thank you. Also, we have State Representative Bill Heffernan that represents West Haven. Thank you, brothers and sisters of the armed services. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran right out of Groton, and I go to the VA. It's the last 10 years we have seen an improvement because of this team that we have behind us, because they are tirelessly working hard for us, okay? Vietnam veterans, our Surfside veterans. Right now, we have hundreds of veterans at the VA, just less than a mile from here. And what if they walk out one day and say, hey, we don't have any benefits anymore? What are we gonna do then? Okay? It's like, we served our country, and some of us longer than others, but the fact is, our veterans need these services. We have many homeless veterans still out there right around West Haven right now that choose not to go to the VA. Not sure why, but we have to work together to help these veterans to say, hey, listen, you deserve this. You really need the help. We're here to help it. Our Vietnam Veterans Group, our Surfside Veterans Group, we do all we can to help our city and our fellow veterans in our city. I have tears going in my eyes because we work as hard as we can with the funds that we raise from our residents and family and friends and our donations that we get. We're just tired of the government telling us we can do this, we can't do that. What else is next? You know, so with that, I want to urge this administration to stop these cuts, stop all the wasteful spending that's being spent elsewhere. Keep our money at the VA, keep our money here at the Veterans Administration. We need the legal services, we need all this to help us. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rich, and thanks for being so poignant. I can understand why there are tears in your eyes, because you know this so poignantly and understand it, and that the services are critical. And I think about the highest rate of suicide in the United States is among veterans. The highest rate of suicide. So when Allison talks about complicated cases and people's mental health issues, etc., that they need assistance and help with, this is abandoning people that we ask to leave family and home and, give up, making an ultimate sacrifice potentially, but just fighting on behalf of this nation. So you really, Rich, thank you for your poignant words, and thanks to the Surfside vets. Let me ask Bill Heffernan, State Representative, to please come on up and say a few words.
Thank you, Rosa. I'd like to thank Rosa and Governor Lamont choosing West Haven today. West Haven has one of the largest veteran communities in the state. We have the VA hospital right here. The VA hospital is our largest employer, many of which are veterans. It's great to see everybody out on a beautiful sunny day here in West Haven. The Republicans will have you believe that it's sunny until you look out the window. But we need to look out the window. That's what we need to do. You men and women of the armed forces stepped up and you fought for us when we needed you to. And it's our turn to step up and fight for you now. And I can't tell you that the sun is shining, but I will tell you that the sun will shine again. And we're here for you. And we thank you for your service. So it's time for us to fight. Thank you.
Thanks for the call to action, and thanks for reminding everyone that we have the best VA hospital in the nation, right here in West Haven, Connecticut. And, you know, people may talk about one or two problems, but bar none, it is unbelievable in terms of the services, the medical care that is provided there. And I stand proudly here to represent it, and will continue to fight for the resources to make sure that it continues to be strong. And I said at the outset, we're here today because of this conversation that the governor and I had, and he is, you know, it's his initiative. Let's do something. Let's do something, Rosa, with the veterans. And Governor, can't thank you enough for all of your efforts, for all the work that you're doing, addressing all of the concerns that are coming forward. And the governor knows that in so many of these areas, whether it is transportation or housing or social services or veterans, that the cuts are coming fast and furious. And he, along with the legislature, are trying to figure out what we can do in order that services do not get interrupted for individuals and for their families. We are really blessed to have Governor Lamont as our governor. Governor?
The irrepressible Rosa DeLauro, you bounce an idea off her and stuff happens almost immediately. Let me just start on a happier note, if I could. Bill, the sun was shining in Tampa yesterday. And it was just remarkable. Everywhere you walked around that town, people wearing Yukon swag. And you'd be standing at the red light, Yukon, Huskies, back and forth across the street. Then the stadium was just on fire. And then that final scene where you see Paige and Gino hugging each other, you really realize what a team is all about. I had the honor of being able to sit with the parents of a lot of the players, and they're still sort of coaches, these dads, still pretty tough on their daughters from the sidelines there. But they did us extraordinarily proud, and we're going to be cheering them on at a parade on Saturday at 11 o'clock. And talk about being on a team and fighting for something bigger than yourself. That's why we're here today, and that's what each and every one of you have done. I talked to, you know, Vietnam and certainly Afghanistan and Iraq right here. I see World War II over here, an experience that made me who I am. And I'm just reminded of talking about the VA Medical Center, the medical creed, do no harm. Do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath. And I'm afraid what you've heard is that's just what we're doing to our veterans right now. You were there when we needed you. You stood up. You were 18, 19 years old, going far afield, putting your lives at risk. And we as a country cannot forget that. And that's in part what this amazing museum is about. And that's what the veterans' benefits are about. In our own humble way in the state, we're trying to do what we can in terms of property tax relief for those who are, you know, most disabled, what we can do to protect you from rip-off artists who are trying to take your benefits. But most importantly, I care deeply about the Veterans Hospital and the VA right here. You know, as you heard Rosa say, we have about, 4,000 folks and veterans working here in the state of Connecticut. You know, if you want Elon Musk with his chainsaw wants to take 15, 20% of those, just take them out, that's what, 600, 800 folks. That's devastating. Heard from Allison what that means in terms of people, what that in terms of mental health, what that means in terms of the type of services that we're trying to provide. We'll make up what we can here in the state of Connecticut, but I really need you to stand up. I need you to stand up and back Rosa and Congress people across the country. You have friends in red states, stand up as well, because this is an opportunity for us to stand up for you, and you're the best advocates to standing up for each and every one of yourselves. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you've done on behalf of the people of Connecticut and the people of this country, and we're not going to forget you.
Thank you, Governor. Just before I open up to questions from the press. This is a personal issue for me. My dad served in the U.S. Army for a number of years. He was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Fort Kamehameha. Wasn't there when Pearl Harbor was invaded, but before that. And I can recall him telling me the stories about, the work that they did, etc., preparing for a potential attack and so forth. And he would always tell those stories with tears streaming down his face. So, and my dad came as an immigrant, came in 1913 for Italy. And he, was a citizen, joined the U.S. Army, served for 9 years in the service of the United States. So as I say, it's personal. And I've been blessed being able to serve in the United States House of Representatives. I have been to Afghanistan 4 times. And you see the terrain that our young men and women fight in. And you wonder how they endure. I've been to Vietnam, went to the Cu Chi tunnels, and saw what our servicemen went through there. And hard to believe the butchery of that war. So for to Normandy, where you see the row on row of the white stones that commemorate those of our fellow Americans who died there, and you see the cliffs where they scaled those cliffs, being opened to German fire from the top. And when you get a chance, and as I say, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to visit these places. I was not in Korea, and I have not been to Iraq, but to the several others. And I just say I take it very, very personally to make sure that we don't send men and women off with the ruffle of, the blare of bugles and the ruffle of drums, and then we're not there to take care of them when they come back. And that's what this is all about. And honestly, there has been tremendous bipartisan support in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate for veterans services, for their medical services, for their, their well-being, for their employment opportunities, for their housing opportunities. And for some reason, with this administration, we are watching an attack, really an assault and an attack on the veterans of this nation. As Bill pointed out, and the governor pointed out, this is a moment. This is a time for action. People need to be on their feet. I said that the U.S. Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You are that external pressure. Some of that pressure was applied over this past weekend. But here in our state, we need to be on our feet, speaking up and saying, no, no. That's not who we are. That's not where our values are. We treasure the people who have served this nation. We honor their valor and their sacrifice, and we will not walk away. And I believe that public outcry, my friends, can turn things around. So we're relying on you, and I say to you honestly, you can rely on us. We are there, and we will be with you. Thank you all for being here today, and I want to thank our speakers today, all of whom are committed 100% to this effort. With that, let me just ask the press if there are any questions, and pass.
Perhaps Allison Ware could address, have you seen delays already? I mean, some of these cuts are obviously very, very recent.
So, I mean, there have been delays for a long time, so what we're afraid of, and what is probably going to happen, is it's going to be more and more delays. We're already seeing cases that are sort of jumping the queue because they're easy, we need to, and the VA has divvied up different cases and adjudications. So you have some of these that are going on much longer. We have some cases that have taken over 3 years to be adjudicated. So it's a problem. It was a problem before, and it's going to be a worse problem. And all across the country, we've had clients who have died while waiting for their benefits to be adjudicated.
Thank you. Rosa, you're hold this government to, the federal government to, the executive branch to account. You know, you want people to stand up. What do you suggest people do?
Well, listen, first of all, let me just say about Connecticut, you have, you have a congressional delegation that is supportive of the efforts and not dealing with the cuts. You have a governor who is helping to lead the charge in this effort. You have a state house with Matt Lesser and others who are there. So let me just say that I think in terms of the political structure and the veterans organizations here are four square there. Now, however, networks. There is no stronger network of people around this nation than veterans across this country. And collectively, veterans need to speak out, speak up. You don't need a member of Congress or a governor to have, you have standing. And they can stand and they can do a press conference, they can call, they can write, and I suggest but it's important for our delegation to know what your feelings are and the governor to know what your feelings are in the state legislature, but you've got friends all over this country. And I'll make a statement to you. I don't believe there is one Democrat who is in opposition or who is opposed to the cuts that are being made. So my suggestion is that we go to some of the other states. And the issue is to visit members of Congress or the Senate in their offices. No need to go to Washington, D.C. Get your friends who have crossed this country to go and visit and let them know that they need to be there and not be voting for these cuts to veterans and stand tall. They can write, you can call, you can march, you can be part of an organization. There are many, many things to engage and be involved on. I'm going to just tell you one thing, but you just say, does that work? Social Security, give you an example. Just 2 weeks ago, the proposal was to say that no longer can you access your benefits or make calls to ask questions about your benefits or to identify yourself as a Social Security recipient through a phone call, that you had to be at the office in person. You had to go in person to be able to talk about your eligibility for Social Security. Public outcry partially turned it around, created a delay in doing that of a couple of weeks, and maybe even a permanent delay, we don't know yet. Public outcry is critical. And whether it is veterans benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, all of these issues are at risk, and the public needs to respond. And veterans know how to respond.
Can I shift just a little bit and ask you about the tariffs?
Sure.
Speaker Johnson has said that he will not call up any sort of bill to, take control of the tariffs away from President Trump. I mean, do you, at least that's what sources are saying. I mean, what do you think can be done in the Congress to try to take back control?
Well, and I'm not suggesting that you haven't, but in the Constitution it says that the Congress has the power to deal with tariffs. But, let me just say that the Constitution also says that the president, and actually it was Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia who opined that the president, this is several years ago, that the president, there was no inherent authority for the power of the purse. But every day, the administration is violating the Constitution and shifting money or not providing the money to the agencies that have been prescribed by law. There's the Department of Education, which is being dismantled as we speak. But you asked about the tariffs that's in the purview of the Congress. So there again, you have to look to the courts to get a sense of what can be done. what can be done. So we have to rely on that. We're going to also rely on legislation and to see if we can, of what happened in the Senate last week, where they voted with several Republicans crossed the aisle to say no to the Canadian tariffs at 25%. Those are the kinds of things that need to get done.
I believe you said at some point when you were talking about potential actions that the courts are our friends,
Yes.
I believe was your word.
Yes.
I believe it was also the Department of Education that the Supreme Court said that the executive branch was able to withhold. I could be crossing my wires, but I mean,
Yeah.
do you actually believe that the courts have the ability to enforce decisions? that
Yes, I think they do. I mean, you get into it. Look, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but there are constitutional issues that can be raised if the administration doesn't want to follow the order of the court. Several of the temporary restraining orders have been placed and with various agencies and so forth. So the courts are working and they're succeeding, and you know, it's just hard for me to believe that, and I don't know, Governor, what your thoughts are. We're a nation of laws. That's what really, you know, here we are in this museum dedicated to men and women who have protected this country, protected our liberty, our freedom, our laws. We stand tall. We are a nation of laws. And to think that a president of the United States would abrogate those laws, we view that in other countries and we don't understand it. And I'm hoping that the administration will follow the courts, because wherein lies our strength, which is what the men and women of the armed forces have provided us with, that strength as a nation of laws.
That's it.
Okay, thank you one and all. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Beautiful show. Good for you to do that.
Bill, thank you.
Rosa, thank you so much for
Thank you, really.
we appreciate it. You remember later.
He wants a picture with you, that's all he wants in life.